The NCAA is on the verge of settling a major antitrust lawsuit, and the ACC is ready to pay their bill.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black, host of this great podcast and editor of Eagle Insider. Come on, check out over my work over there. Today, we have some landmark news in the world of college sports as the ACC voted to agree to pay part of the antitrust lawsuit that's being voted on, that has been litigated for the NCAA. In addition, we're going to look at Earl Grant's decisions in the transfer portal and how I think that might end up better than some might expect. And finally, we'll talk a little recruiting as we get ready for official visit seasons, as BC is looking to kind of fill out their recruiting class, and we'll look at the linebacker position. I want to give you some updates there. You want to hear my thoughts on that. So let's kick this off with breaking news on Tuesday evening, as Ross Dellinger and many others announced that the ACC was the second conference to vote to approve to pay upwards of $1.65 billion as part of 3 consolidated antitrust suits that is going to be paid for damages to former athletes for the use of their names, images, and likenesses. Now, I'm not going to get into all the legalities of what those 3 antitrust lawsuits are, but the way that they're going to pay this out is it's $2.8 billion in damages over 10 years that they're going to pay out to athletes. And it sounds like it has 3 different there were 3 different things that they had to fit to get paid. They had to be a power conference football player or basketball player with for damages on their broadcast NIL. So that would be any sort of media rights thing. Third-party NIL, if they were ever used on an advertisement, and video game use. So that's going to be going back to those earlier NCAA games. Power conference women's basketball players for their broadcast NIL and third-party NIL. There's no video games for them, and additional D1 athletes for their use in video games and third-party NIL. So this deal they're saying is going to pay athletes up to $180 million, $180,000 over 10 years. Nice little paycheck for some athletes that, were just getting basic stipends back then while their names were being blasted all over the place. So this is a pretty historic deal in terms of the end of the amateurism that we saw in college sports. It's dead now. We knew that with NIL, that this amateur model where kids are going to get an education and that's it. That's what's paying them is an education. That's dead. That mind frame is dead. And we knew that with the group out now that the kids that are getting paid. I mean, you just look at the news today with Jaden Rashada, who is now at Georgia. He's on his 3rd team or 4th team he's committed to. And there's a whole thing with him being guaranteed to be paid $13 million by Florida, and the Gators reneged on him. That's the new, whether you like it or not, that's the new normal for college football. And this antitrust lawsuit is protecting those players that didn't get that pay and that remuneration that they deserved when they were being used. And they were being used, right? Like, how many times when A.J. Dillon was playing for BC, could you walk into a college, the BC bookstore, and find, a number 2 jersey, but it didn't have his name on it? Or you could find a Matt Ryan jersey, like when I was there, and a number 12 jersey, or a 94 for Mark Herzlich. They were there all the time, and you knew who the player was, but they weren't getting paid for it because that was their kind of legal end around. Now those players are going to get paid, and they deserve it because they were getting used. And the video games the same way, right? You played NCAA 2013, and you had number 94 out there. You knew who that was. Didn't say it, but they were using their image and likeness there. So this is a big deal, and the fact that the ACC is jumping on it is a big deal itself too. That they're being proactive here, because honestly, none of these conferences have much to stand on. they're gonna, they've got to bite the bullet whenever they can, and this is the chance to do it. Now, how much is this going to hurt teams, schools? Well, Ross Dellinger's report says that the smaller schools conferences, I think of like the Northeast Conference, Patriot League, they're going to get screwed on this because they're paying, um, you know, they're paying quite a bit too. And these players that they brought in would never get name, image, and likeness. So they're basically paying the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC, the Power Five schools, for their athletes. I mean, it doesn't seem fair that they're going to have to pay, they're not going to pay the same amount, but it's still disproportionate, right? For the ACC, though, schools like BC, it sounds like from what I read that schools like BC is going to have to pay like $20 million a year to cover this for 10 years. It's a lot of money. So we'll have to wait and see what the exact numbers are going to be. But this is big. This is a big deal. And just that, there's other lawsuits out there too. Oh, I apologize. One of the numbers was wrong. They're expecting each school to lose $1.1 to $2 million per year. But moving forward, they're looking at a number closer to 22% of an average power school's conference media rights that's going to have to be shared with the athletes. That's going to be a big change. So, say, the ACC, there, I think it was like $39 to $41 million, if I remember correctly, in the last couple of years. We'll just ballpark that, right? So let's say 40 million just to make it an even number. If the cap is 22%, that $40 million, that means $8 to $10 million are going to have to go to athletes. So that kind of gives you an example of what's going to be like. And again, schools like in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to have more money to distribute to their players. It's going to continue to raise that gap, right? Like if the SEC is making 70, $80 million and they're distributing between 16 and $20 million to their athletes, that's a much bigger pool to spend on their recruits. And it's going to make a bigger difference than like Florida State, who I said they're going to have like $6 to $10 million. So that again is showing that it's going to be a major difference between the haves and the have-nots. In this media rights deal that's going on with the ACC is going to continue to hamper the conference. So it's an interesting look at what's going to happen. And again, the one thing that's going to come out of this, as I said, the end of amateurism, is that it leaves the door open for these athletes to become employees with everything that goes with that. If they're going to be employees, they're going to get paid, they're going to have a salary, they're going to have insurance and all the benefits that you would get at a school like BC. So I think that is going to be the next step, is will these players become employees and not just students? The term student athlete is going to be gone. It's going to be gone soon, folks. And this ruling was the next step in crumbling that antiquated term. Now, in our second segment, I want to talk about basketball. I want to look at Earl Grant and the moves he's made. And I want to talk about why it may not be the sexiest roster rebuild, but I like the looks of what he's doing and what this team could look like heading into next season. I'll explain why in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championship, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. With superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home your huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive a lot at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here. Now, basketball. They are at 12 scholarships, which is crazy because it was only a few weeks ago. It felt like everyone's going, how is Boston College going to even have a team after they lost 6 players to the transfer portal and they lost Quinton Post to the NBA draft? Quinton Post we knew was going to be gone. He had no eligibility left. That wasn't a surprise. Some of the other 6 were more surprising than others. I think top of that list would be Devin McLaughlin. But BC has had to basically, through the transfer portal and true freshmen, rebuild their class and get ready for this upcoming season with all new names. You're basically returning 4 players from last year. And most of them were more role players than anything. And that was Chaz Kelly, who missed like the last month with, I think, appendicitis or a health issue. Donald Hand, who was off the bench. Elijah Strong, who had a very strong last month of the season and looks like going to be a fun player, and Jaden Hastings, who didn't play at all. You also have Fred Payne, who played like 2 or 3 weeks before he blew his knee out, and that's it. Now you bring in 2 true freshmen, 2 guards, or 2. You were planning on bringing in 2 true freshmen, Luca Taves and Nick Petronio, both local guards. Petronio also coming back from a knee injury. Don't know what you're going to have there. And Taves, who's had some strong AAU play this last year. So Grant has had to be, he's had to kind of adjust how he's building this roster. And he's done it in a way that I like, which is you can go with a bunch of different types of guys in the transfer portal. You can get former blue chips, like guys like TJ Power, who were hoping there was going to be here, hasn't done anything. And you'd hope that he would, develop here. But he obviously didn't get him. You're getting more guys that are hungry. You're getting hungry players that want to prove that they belong at the Power 5 level and have done successfully at lower levels and know how to do it. You look at guys like Dion Brown and, as we saw yesterday, Fred McFarland and even Chad Venning are 3 guys that have produced at the level that they played at. Now, Venning played in the A10. He played for St. Bonaventure. So he's done it at a solid level. When you look at Brown and McFarland, they've played at a lower level, but they've both been successful. They're both lengthy guards, and both of those guys have a chip on their shoulder that they want to be able to produce at the ACC level. And I think that kind of hunger and that kind of, I don't want to say like they feel like they just been disrespected, but there's going to be some urge in them to do what they can do to win at the ACC level. I feel blends well with what Earl Grant has brought in terms of culture here. It's always been those guys that have done things here. You look at guys like Jaden Zachary, Devin McLaughlin, Quinton Post, all of them were under the radar recruits or transfers that weren't successful elsewhere, and he built them up here. He found what they could do and did it well. So to that extent, I think this rebuild is putting BC back into a position where they have been in years past. I still think they need at least one more, either stretch 4 or 5 for a big body underneath the rim. But I like what he's done so far, and even bringing in a guy like Josh Beadle, who, he's not like the other kind of transfer you can get is just a guy that's laterally moving around that just wants to play and win somewhere. Beadle doesn't fit that at all. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit. He just has not had a chance to really shine. And I think he's going to have hunger. He's going to want to be a guy that they can rely on. He's going to be a junior. He's been around a while. He's going to want to be able to show that he's more than just a 3-point shooter, 3 points per game shooter, as he was at Clemson. He was not a 3-point shooter at all. That's the kind of mentality I think that could help BC. Now, is that enough to make this team take the next step? I'm, as I said on yesterday's episode, I'm still hesitant to say anything about that. I need to see what the ceiling of this team is. But will this team be, I've seen people saying this team isn't going to win any ACC games. They're going to win ACC games. I'm not worried about that piece. I don't know how far up they're going to go. Like, I think, it at this point, like, you look at it and go, next year, the ACC tournament isn't going to take every team. Every team does not make it with the addition of Cal, SMU, and Stanford. The hope is that I would think a hope with this rebuild is that they make it into the ACC tournament. And I know that's lower expectations, but it's not like Jim Christian 2015 lowered expectations. This is, they're going to be okay. Can they continue to get even better? Can they take some positive steps in the right direction? Because most of these guys are going to get back in a year. I think almost all of them have more than 1 year of eligibility. They're going to probably lose one or two, probably to the transfer portal, but you have guys that you can build around and hope that in next season they can take that step. And my hope also is that we don't know what the out of conference schedule looks like yet, but I hope that they're thinking, okay, this is a rebuild year. Let's not bury ourselves with tough out of conference schedules. Yes, I know folks out there really, really like having big programs come in here, but we don't need you have the ACC schedule that's going to be tough enough. This team needs to gradually get into that and needs time to gel. I would love to see lots of Bryant's, BU's, uh, you know, uh, Hartford. I know they don't exist anymore, but like smaller schools, St. Francis, St. whatever. Get those small Fairfield. Get those smaller schools in here. Let's work on those first, and then you can get some wins and build something there, and then get ready for the ACC schedule. But I honestly don't think this is the worst. I'm kind of excited to see what this is going to look like. I think there's more there than people are giving them credit for, and it all fits into the mold of that gritty, not pretty mentality that Earl Grant has brought in. I mean, he's brought in a couple guards that are going to be killer rebounders for him. He's got a good big guy in Chad Benning. It's gonna, he's got a new freshman, Connie Chanda, who's another, a four. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Now, in our final segment, I'm going to go into college football recruiting. That's my bread and butter on Eagle Insider. It's a lot to talk about. I'm going to talk about linebackers and the change of what we're looking at in terms of that position. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. And we are just about a week and a half away from the busiest recruiting month on the college football schedule for BC, at least. It's bigger than National Signing Day because if you've been following recruiting, National Signing Day for BC is just basically for 95% of it is just it's who's coming in. It's just checking the box. It's done. This month is where a majority of the commitments are going to come. This is when they take their official visits. This is when they commit originally. And for a program like Bill O'Brien is building, it's going to be really crucial that he get a majority of his class in and get some of those names to sign on the dotted line. Not sign on the dotted line, but give that verbal handshake that you get after a commitment like that. Now, I want to talk about the linebacker position because this is going to be an interesting one to watch for. Now, one of the biggest knocks on Jeff Hafley was his building of the linebackers. Gone were the days of Kevin Pierre-Louis, Luke Kuechly, Mark Herzlich, Mike McLaughlin, you name it, those Stephen Daniels, those typical big thumping, physical BC linebackers. And Hafley had this tendency to not really recruit linebackers, but recruit big safeties that he then converted to linebacker. You look at Cam Arnold, you look at Bryce Steele, you look at some of the other guys that they've had. Jalen Blackwell, I believe, was one. They've brought in a lot of guys that were converted safeties, and it's been a mixed bag. That it's not been a position where I would say BC has been particularly excelling at, but there's a lot of guys that we're going to have to watch them, see how they develop. Guys like Davion Crouch, who was not that form, but you have some still left on that roster. Now, Dan O'Brien is the new linebackers coach. That's Tom O'Brien's son. He's living off his own laurels, though. He's worked at SMU. He worked at Georgia. He started his career at BC. He's done a lot of different things, right? He's looking at the linebacker position, and he's starting to make some offers, and we're starting to see where the class is kind of molding into. And the first commitment we saw was Griffin Collins, the kid from Worcester Academy. He's listed as an athlete, but I've been told he's going to be he's being recruited most likely as a linebacker. He's like 6'2", 220. He's a good sized kid too. But he's not a safety. So there you go. And the other guys that I've heard that BC has on their big board, which include Zachary Thomas out of Georgia and Lance Walker, and I think he's out of Missouri or Illinois, Midwest kid. These are typical linebackers. These are not your safety hybrids anymore. So you're going to see the linebacker position kind of adjust. Now, does the linebackers now need more speed than they did back when Mark Herzlich was there? Yes. The play of that position, it is critical to get speed there. But you also need size too, and you need guys that are comfortable playing that position. It's tough to watch, and we saw it for a while, watching guys that are typical safeties have huge learning curves as they've been added to a new position that they're not typically used to. So to get typical linebackers like these guys, like you have Collins already committed, you're looking for one more, and there's other guys that they might still offer. Getting a more typical linebacker might improve that position moving forward. Now, I expect there's one committed right now, as I said, that they're going to add at least one more. So you're going to be looking at 2 linebackers in this class. You also have outside linebacker edge positions, but that's a different conversation. If you want to see that board, it's up on Eagle Insider. I've done this for every position, and this is not just me guessing. This is based off of sources I've talked to, my knowledge. I've talked to the kids. I've talked to a lot of different folks. So if you want to know exactly what BC is doing, come over to Eagle Insider, check it out. If you go to the most recent one, which I think I did was on the secondary today, last one I did, it has links to every position other than quarterback because they won't talk about quarterback. I have every position up there. You can get all the names, see who's coming, when they're coming, who's battling for them. But this linebacker position, it's an adjustment from what you've seen in the last couple of years, and I think for most folks, this is a good thing. I think most folks wanted to see them resume the kind of style of linebacker play that made Boston College's defense so nasty for so many years. And I give credit to Steve Adazio. He also had good linebackers too. I mean, you go back and you look at some of the guys that they had, Connor Strahan, guys like Ty Schwab. They had some guys that came in and they were pretty good. So anyways, we'll wrap things up here. I'll be back again tomorrow for Thursday's episode. We're getting closer to the weekend, and anything that breaks, we'll be here to talk about it. If you have any things that you want to talk about, hit it up in the comments section. I want to hear what you have. If there's something that you thought you had or a question you had for me, don't be afraid to leave it in the comments section. I do read it. And if it's more than AJ, you're an idiot, I usually respond to it. So I'd love to hear from you guys as well. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and come over to Eagle Insider, become a member, become part of our raucous community over there. It's a great group of guys and fellas. I would love to see you over there as well. But ladies too. I don't want to make this gender exclusive. Get the ladies over there too. We'll be back again tomorrow for another episode. And thank you for making Locked On Boston College your first listen to. And we are Locked On Boston College, your team every day.